can be very tough, because then we sort of still in a relaxed mood. But on the contrary, it's also good because it's only a 4-day week. But as I've expressed myself previously, I sometimes feel more tired after a 4-day week than a 5-day week. But we all have our different challenges. Thanks for joining, Stanley. We all have our different challenges. I believe the weather's rather chilly up in the north for those in Centurion and whichever regions you've tuned in from. But the second week is almost sort of okay. Right now, we've put our toes in the water. It's the start of a second semester. Almost now time to get serious. And it's a good sign if that is the case. Mondays are one of those days that, you know what, as somebody said this morning to me, a friend of mine, says he's too old to play with toys. He's too young to go on pension. He's definitely hasn't got enough energy to enter into an affair. He's just too tired. And I think round about this time of year, August, mid-August, September, my parents always also being teachers. Welcome everybody that joined, Teresa. Thank you. I could also, if I reflect now, I can recall that my mother was also very, very tired right about this time of year. I think it's something that's almost sort of part of the profession, for so to speak. But anyway, all good. It's been a good weekend. I think I maybe relaxed more than I should, and maybe I could have worked a bit harder. But at the end of the day, on your deathbed, people are not going to say, "Oh, geez, I missed my work." They're going to say, "Oh, I missed my family." So I am quite happy that I actually did spend a bit more time with my loved ones. I hope the case is the same with you as well. Some of you have gone through some serious challenges in the last couple of weeks. We are aware of it, and as I said, at any time, if you want to individually share and need some counseling, we have the professionals that can deal with that. Sometimes if you just want to drop me emails that say, "I don't feel well today," like my son said the other day, he was not showing any symptoms of being really sick on Friday, to school, but he said, "Dad, I have to go because we've got this. I've got to submit this draft 1 for the task, and I also have to attend a particular practical session." I said, "Oh, that's fine, but I mean, if the choice is mine, I would not send you to school." But anyway, I picked him up after school on Friday, and the teacher was sick. The session that he wanted to go to school for, the teacher was absent. So I said to him, "You know what? It's all good." And then he said to me, "You know, Dad, sometimes we all need just a day to sit in a corner, to sit in a room and say, just leave me alone. I just want to vent. I just want to be with myself. I'm okay. There's nothing wrong. But we all need to sort of recharge in our own way, and we all do that differently." So I think to an extent I applied that same lesson that he taught me on the weekend. I was a bit more relaxed. I'm glad Liverpool won. I think you probably find your Spurs supporters with a bigger smile that they usually have at the start of the season. Can't say the same about the Man City boys. But then on the other hand, I'm just glad to see that, although it's not evident in our country yet, because it definitely has a very positive impact on the mood of a community in another country. If we see that, if everybody is vaccinated and we are following all the protocols, we can have 50, 60, 70,000 people at a football match in England. We can get back to a new normal, and almost the old normal that we used to. That's glad that should be sufficient evidence for people who still are in doubt as to what the best solution is for us to get through the challenges that we're experiencing. Everybody else, I'm assuming that Andre is not back yet, or is still unpacking. I saw that a lot of roads when he went into KZN to see some snow in Drakensberg, and I believe that some of the roads are closed. It was some heavy snow, which is good for the farmers in the Eastern Cape. So in general, on a Monday, we just check in to see everybody's doing, what you've experienced, what you want to share. And just to determine the vibe for the day, and I know that we are usually not that great out the blocks on a Monday, but we're going to do our best we can today anyway. If everything is okay with you, or if the arrangement carries your approval, I'm going to rather, instead of, because we've got a back-to-back double period now, I'm going to suggest that we do shorter sessions and take a break. I won't terminate the link, and we just take shorter breaks, and then we finish slightly earlier, because to have 40 minutes with a 5-minute break in between and another 40 minutes on any day is tough. So if it's okay with you, we'll manage it. Maybe at any point during the session, if I see there's a section break, I want to start a new concept, just for continuity, I'd rather stop there and resume after a short break. Just give me a thumbs up if that's okay with you, and then we'll implement that today. Or we can stick to the original, which is a 40-minute double period. Thank you very much, Teresa. I'm assuming they're talking on behalf of the class, or because you're the only one that responded. Let's majority rules, so it's decided. Where we left off on Friday, and thanks for that too. Where we left off on Friday was that when we started with the second chapter on of personal selling, of the personal selling module, we identified that because the customer is king there, we need to, as to be successful as future salespeople, we need to try and get us develop a very, very sound understanding of how the consumer behaves, what influences, and especially, yes, the factors that influence the decisions that customers take. We've addressed some of them. We've looked at family, and we all realized that, yeah, important. Brody, you also said to me, I mean, when it comes to in important decisions, yes, you'll still consult family, but you're not going to ask your mom and dad for approval on a specific brand or preference on a certain brand when you're going to buy out some milk and bread. So the more complex a decision is for the consumer, the more the greater the amount of the transaction is. We are going to involve people like our family, like people that we look up to in society, whose opinions we trust and whose opinions we value when we as consumers make decisions. Our social class, very much determined by what we earn in our specific professions. Your earning capacity is directly linked to what your spending power is. If you do not have money in your wallet, regardless of what time of month it is, you just cannot buy certain items. And you will also prioritize, and I think that also ties in with the previous one on family. Whatever cycle or phase in your life cycle you are, if you have people who are dependent on you, you will put their priorities, you will put their needs first. Usually we do. It's just human nature. And we will spend that money that we have, or that limited funds that we have, to satisfy as many people's needs in our immediate family, and be unselfish ourselves. Our demographics, our age, our gender, where we live, we all are clear that this is a very important factor that influences on how we make our decisions. Our lifestyles more more so than anything else. And then we, excuse me, my apology. And then we finished off on Friday when you looked at personality, and thank goodness our personalities are all different. Wouldn't you hate to, or sometimes I think some people would say, oh geez, imagine if we're all the same, then I can actually date myself, and that will actually be okay, because then because I know myself. But that'd be boring. Imagine picking a fight with yourself. So thank goodness we all have different characteristics. We all have different a different psychological makeup, and our personalities are different. Why personality in particular is important for you as future salespeople, is that it's not necessarily always just limited to how you feel about yourself and how you see yourself, but it's very much influenced by how we would like other people to see us. So very often our buying decisions we make based on how we might appear in the eyes of maybe our peer group, and as a result of that, or the reference group that we affiliate to, and as a result of that, it impacts on our decisions that we take, and we sometimes make good decisions in that regard. It should not be the greatest motivating factor for us, but we cannot ignore the fact that consumers do make decisions in line with how they would like other people to perceive them, or how they perceive themselves. On screen at the moment, you'll find also the examples of items that's usually bought by consumers to enhance their image. We know that clothing is very important, what you drive, and I've shared that with you before, I cannot understand. Again, this morning, I went for a walk with my dog quite early. The sun was not out yet. And as I walked through the neighborhood, and it's a nice quiet estate here in Kraaifontein, I saw there's so many people who have a 3-bedroom, or I'm not sure what the inside of the house looks like, but I'm assuming it's a 3-bedroom open plan living area, bride room, small little garden at the back, single garage, and they've got the most expensive vehicles from Jeep Cherokees all the way through to the latest BMWs parked in the driveway, outside, in the weather, not even in the garage. You know what? I'm not sure. I think it's again an indication of the different phases of our lives that we go through. Very often people would rather have a very well-known branded expensive vehicle sort of parked in their driveway to resemble the image, but they live in a not such a great neighborhood. Some people would have a car outside parked on bricks, not really in the best shape, but it's a beautiful house. People are different, and because people are different, they buy different things. Their needs are different. Collectively, everything that we set up to this point, your family, your social status, your personality, all of that combined plays a very important role in decisions that customers take. And that's why it's so challenging for a salesperson to identify exactly what customers want, because it's almost as if what the customer wants today is not what he's going to want tomorrow. Having said that, it's also important, therefore, to again realize that your role, and we'll see that in chapter 3 when we start after the break, communication. Your major function as a salesperson is to inform the customer and to persuade the customer. Persuade the customer by what we said at the start of chapter 2, highlighting the features and the benefits and the advantages that the customer will get from buying a particular product. I think it's very important to remember that this is how consumers. Remember, you're putting on two different hats at the moment. We have our selling hat on now. We're not the consumer, because all of you are still consumers, like myself included. But as I suggested on Friday as well, if you put yourself in the shoes of the consumer, it makes it easier for you as a salesperson to sell, because you would not like to end up with a product that you won't have a need for, or that you don't really can afford, that you didn't really want. But just to be kind and nice to the salesperson, you accept it. You bought into their sales pitch and you bought the product which you know you're not really going to need or use. So again, every single time in the next 6, 7, 8, 12 chapters that we're going to do in this course, always remember that if you put your sales cap on and you are unsure of what you should be doing as a sales consultant, put yourself in the shoes of the customer. When you're preparing, and as I said from chapter 4, we will go through different steps in the selling cycle individually, chapter by chapter. If you are going to prepare for your questions when you pick up the phone and phone a potential customer prospect, put yourself in the shoes of that customer. Draft some questions that you would ask yourself, or that you would want the salesperson to ask you. One of the most important components or influencing factors on the decisions that customers make is their own personality, because at the end of the day, they are going to be the ones who end up with the product. A product that they might not need or want, or a product that they're very satisfied with. Nothing else. There's a lot of influencing factors, yes. There's a lot of people that you consult in the process, but you are the one who's making the final decision, and you're going to be one that's either stuck with the problem or the product, or happy with the transaction that you've made. Our culture plays a very important role too, purely because I think culture is a combination of the values and beliefs and norms and practices that we are exposed to through our formative years. It keeps people together, and it is therefore very often referred to as the personality of society, or society's personality. The 7 points that we have, or the 6 points that we've highlighted on the screen, that is so evident to culture, is very important. And if we unpack them individually, we'll see that, my apologies for that, I should have put my phone on silent, which I just did. It will give us an indication of the impact that the culture that we have grown into, or grown up in, the impact that has on the decisions that we take. Our cultures, we are born into a culture, but it depends on how the people in your culture expose you, to what extent they expose you to the values, the norms, and the beliefs of that culture. Very often, let's take an example, for instance. Before I give you the example, let me ask you a question. Any of you, the 6 that we have online today, is any of you named after a family member, like a grandfather, or one of your parents, or a combination? Your name is a combination of family names. Brody? Riso is, yes. She definitely is named after family. Nope, I didn't think so, bro. Now, I know that in my case, my full name is Daniel Jacobus Janse van Rensburg. Now, you try and put that onto any documentation or you won't find a form in this country where you have to fill in your name and surname that has enough blocks. Even if I don't use any spacing to fill in my names. But you know what? Um, I can understand because that was sort of part of our heritage and the norms and the values of the culture that I was born into. And I can understand that. But I also made it very clear to my parents when I started my own family that my children will not have family names. They've got the family surname. So the name that I choose for my children would not be family related. It would be a name that I think the child would be comfortable with. I think that is also something that has changed. Again, it depends on how strong certain norms and values and beliefs like that is within a particular culture that impact on the amount of influence that your culture has on the decisions that you take as a customer. We can, in other words, change, and I do believe that there are certain aspects within a culture that has changed over generations, and thankfully that has been the case. But it is definitely the cultures that we represent definitely indicate us or represent, sorry, is for a better word, represent different needs, and it becomes a very, very important influencing factor for salespeople to remember when they market certain products to different cultures of a society. And that would be probably one of different cultures of a society. If I go to the next screen, for instance, if we look at the different images that we have on our screen there, it sort of reflects different cultures. I think if we look at all the different images, it's very clear which cultures they represent. I'm not so sure if the British will be very happy with the fact that I've chosen fish and chips and one of the big double-decker buses to present their culture. But you know what? In my opinion, that specific image, if I show you that image, you can immediately identify that as a particular country or culture. And similarly with a dress code, for instance, and some aspects of a culture, like your dress code, for instance, represents. Look at the images that we have on the screen of the Arabic culture as well as the African culture. The one center bottom and the one top left. It's and you can even include the Japanese for that matter. You would be very, very clear on which cultures they represent if you see that particular dress code, for instance. And it's important for you as salespeople when you have a list of prospects that you are in front of you that you are going to contact in the next half an hour. Cold calls that you're going to make, people that you've never met before. You're quite right. Thanks for giving us a good laugh on the Monday, Tarquin. I loved it. As I said, one of my oldest and longest friends, and dearest friends for that matter, is Omar Hindru, the South African ex-South African cricketer, oldest non-white South African to debut for the Protea cricket team. And as I said, my friendship with him has exposed me to specifically the Muslim culture, and that was eye-opening to me. And to be honest with you, I think there's a lot to be said for 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 um, for cross-cultural education, and I think it's very important. I think it's one of the greatest challenges that we have in our country is that we have not been able um, to expose ourselves and open ourselves to different cultures. We as soon as that happens, or the sooner that happens, the better for all of us. But it is difficult because I think within cultures, there's such a lot of continuous changes that makes it difficult for people even not being part of that particular culture to understand. But yes, it is important to and when you have that list of prospects in front of you, that you make sure that you have a good idea. And if you do not have an idea, if you just have a name in front of you of a prospect that you want to contact now, um, one of the first questions that you should ask is to identify what particular culture that person is from, because that will guide you a great deal as to what type of questions you should be asking from now on. Um, I think there's many examples that we can identify here, and I'm pretty sure that we will be. I'm not going to now engage in that. Um, I am going to go to the next slide, which is an illustration of what we have up to this point identified and related to culture and what the importance of culture, because there are so many abstract and so many physical factors that impact on that form part of a culture, and makes our decisions as consumers so much more difficult. And if our decisions are difficult as consumers, how difficult is it for the salesperson to try and understand the and react correctly to the different prospects representing different cultures that they are going to approach as potential customers? It's an ever evolving process, to be honest with you. Right. Characteristics that we that is are influenced by culture is the way in we communicate. This is an important slide and important part of this chapter for salespeople. How different cultures communicate, how we communicate with different cultures, the dress, their appearance, the food that they eat. These are all cues that can assist you to ask certain questions and prepare certain questions for your sales pitch that you are going to make to different potential customers. What they believe, what's important to them. I'm pretty sure that if you tie everything together, and you'll find that a particular individual in a certain phase of his life cycle, like for instance a 55-year-old male who has 2 children, one in high school, one in primary school, in a certain profession, the decisions that that individual is going to take, the questions that is apparent and important for that individual are slightly different to a 25-year-old single male or female student, for that matter, who has actually no responsibility, but no dependents, children, or people that they have to specifically take care of. And therefore, it is important that the greatest challenge also for salespeople also present them with the greatest opportunities, because it teaches you learn such a great deal. And I think from making that call to an unknown factor, not knowing what the culture of that particular prospect is, not knowing what their personality is like, not know what phase of their life cycle they're in, it it adds to the experience that you build as a salesperson, because you are going to this is free training to you. You won't find this in the manual or any textbook in any course. is hardcore, and it's exactly what you are eventually going to, as in future sales, are going to have to go through. It's the best way of learning, to make that call. Okay, occasionally you embarrass yourself by asking the wrong questions. But people, if you don't ask the questions, you're not going to get an answer. You might ask the wrong question and feel embarrassed afterwards for asking that question. But you've obtained something from that exercise. If you don't ask the question, nobody can answer you. So it's difficult. To get back to what we said at the start of chapter 1, last week, Wednesday, when we introduced this module to you, there's that that's that impression out there that anybody can sell. And yes, we all have the ability to sell. You need special characteristics to be able to do what we have just so far in only 2 chapters have unbundled. Your job as a salesperson is not that easy. The job of a salesperson is not easy. There's so many factors that influence it, but at the end of the day, what we have said in this chapter so far is that you have to be aware of and try and collect as much information as possible. And can I ask you a question which I want you to please react to me? Well, share your individual thoughts with me. What, in your opinion, is the best way of getting to know a customer? Taking him out for coffee, go play a round of golf with him. What would you say is the best way of getting to know your customer? Thanks, Darkwin, but how would you find out if you have the same hobbies? Coffee or lunch? It's good, but how are you going to get that person to go to coffee and go to lunch with you in the first place? What's the first action that you take as a salesperson to get to that point even? Let's wait and see what Mklapu says. Anybody's welcome to jump in at any point. Interaction, Brady, you're on the right track. What if I started this conversation with now? A question. Thank you very much, Tarquin. Well, talking of Gold Star winner for the morning, everything, people, in sales starts with a question. Everything starts with a question. You are going to get a reply from a question. Hopefully, most of the time. How are you feeling today? Well, people can reply, or should, usually do. I'm okay. Oh, no, didn't sleep well last night. Not a good day. There's always a response to a question. The question provides you with information to ask the next question. Selling is not about trying to sell your product and convince the consumer to buy your product by selling the benefits and the features. Yes, That's the objective. To get to that point, we ask questions. Questions result in answers which you respond to. We'll deal with it in the next chapter when we start on communication, especially verbal communication. Everything starts with a question. And please, in conclusion to this chapter, what are we doing for time? Right. In conclusion for this session, and then we'll take a nice short break. It's all good to ask the questions. It's all good to obtain the information. It's all good to respond to it correctly. And you do that better. The more questions you ask, the more experience you build over time. You have to remember that at the end of the day, the decision to buy or not to buy is the consumer's. Your job, and we'll see that in the next chapter, as a salesperson, is to inform, to persuade, not to push. You want to make the sale, yes, that's your objective. But at the end of the day, I've had so many experiences in my life. I went back last night and I did some backtracking to the days I lived in England and worked in England in the late 80s, early 90s. And it was very clear to me, the lessons that I've learned there is that patience is actually the greatest virtue that you can have in a sales game. You are constantly under pressure by your sales manager to reach certain targets and make certain targets and achieve certain goals and objectives. But I've seen more, and I've learned that from experienced salespeople. I've seen more people being effective in sales who provided the correct information to the customer, gave them everything that they needed, all the information, all the persuasive arguments for and against, without being pushy, backing off at the right time when the customer was not prepared and you don't know what's happening in somebody's life, if they can afford it. People are very scared to say, you know what, no, Brody, sorry, man, I just don't have the money to buy this product at the moment. We reply with a variety of excuses and why not. That's one of the things that customers don't want to admit, that they really can't afford it. They want it so badly, but they can't afford it. But they can't get to that point where they tell you that, you know what, I can't afford it. I'm sorry. That usually is also in a cue for a salesperson to say, you know what, it's fine. I understand completely. You know what? I've been in that situation in my life many times as well. It's things I want, but I can't afford it. So, you know what? I didn't forget about it, but if it was important enough to me, I saved up a bit more, I sacrificed a bit more so I could actually eventually have it. But salespeople backing off and providing a consumer with space to make a decision, 9 out of 10 times that customer has returned in future. At a time that you least expected, they phone you and they say, remember you spoke to me about 3 months ago? I wasn't sure about this product, you know what, and you don't have, at that point, you don't need to now unbundle against it. Okay, so what has improved in the last 3 months that you're now ready to make a decision? You just say thank you, because you have to pat yourself on the back because you did something right when you pitched the sale in the first place, by not pushing the sale, but by just following the instructions that was provided to you by the consumer. The responses that they give you, the answers they gave to your questions, is the thing that that is important. And you realize that it was important, you acknowledge it was important, and as a result of that, you've built a relationship with that person without even knowing it. Because you were sincere, because you respected them and their responses, they now act in a positive manner, and they reward you for that loyalty. Anybody, any questions at this stage? Please remember that at the end of the day, it's the consumer's decision to take. The last section of this chapter, which I'm going to browse over, the last section of this chapter, the last couple of slides I'm going to browse over, is just to reiterate what we have, what I've just said in the last 5 minutes or so, regarding the decision being made by the customer, or the final decision being that of the customer, and us as salespeople respecting that it is their decision to make and not to push them to make that decision. I'm not going to go into too much detail in those last number of slides, which I browse through now, and I'll show you on the screen. We have addressed it in a certain way already in this discussion. I just want to leave you with, at the end of this chapter, and then we'll take a break and we'll resume afterwards. That's very valuable lesson or quote from Bob Hooley, and that is that you have to take care of your customers, because others, if you don't, your competitors will. Okay, and it's very important to remember that that in the long run, if you want to retain your customers and convert them to become loyal supporters and raving fans of your business and brand and products, that you have to put them first all of the time, not just sometimes. Yeah, well, thank you very much. By the way, for those of you, Brody has also reminded me today, not just with this comment now, but something else. I just side noticed myself. For those who have not, was not aware of the fact, today, 44 years ago in 1977, Elvis Presley died. I've never been exposed to his music. To me, it wasn't such a significant occurrence at that stage. But Brody, you would love to know the fact that when I worked in London, I stayed in a specific area in London because I dated a girl from Australia at that stage. His brother was a backup drummer in a band of a very well-known band, which I'm not going to disclose either. And it was the same flat that Bob Marley stayed in when he did recordings in London. I'm not going to say that's my claim to fame, but it was a humbling experience. Anyway, people, at this point, let's take a break. It's been a solid start for the week. It is Monday, so we have to pace ourselves. When we return, I'm going to stop the recording, but I'm going to keep the link open. What's the time now? I believe it's 7 minutes past 2 o'clock. When shall we resume? You want a 10-minute break, guys? Luanda? Shall we resume 2:15? Let's resume 2:15. Let's take a nice 10-minute break, get a cup of coffee, pour yourself something, make a sandwich, go answer Nature's call. I'll stop the recording for the session. I'll keep the link open and we resume at 2:15. Thanks. Chat to you soon.